This is the Paracave Podcast, proudly brought to you by major sponsor Parramatta Leagues Club, home of the Eels, and also home of Jack's Pale Ale.
Welcome to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Paracave.
And yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. It is the tipping podcast for round number 14 now, well and truly over halfway of the NRL season. So this means that every win now here on in is very crucial on the charge towards the semi-finals. It all kicks off with two rivals playing each other up at McDonald Jones Stadium on Thursday night. It sees the Newcastle Knights take on the Manly Sea Eagles. Obviously, these two played in the 1997 Grand Final. What a cracker of a Grand Final that was. But look, a lot of times have changed since then. And look, for Newcastle, the good news for them, or is it good news, Newcastle fans? Let me know that Kalen Ponga is back in the number 1 jersey. He was rested last week following Origin 1, which I thought was probably a little bit strange, but he was rested. Fletcher Sharp, who was playing fullback, goes back to the 5/8 position, and Jack Cogger is the halfback. Leo Thompson, he is serving a 4-match ban for a crusher tackle, so Brodie Jones starts in the front row. For Manly, well, Jake Trbojevic is back after missing 2 games with concussion. Judge Tavanga slides to the bench, Matt Lodge drops out, and also Josh Aloiai has a shoulder injury, so Toa Sipley goes back into the front row. Now, if we look at recent meetings, they only met last year one time, and that was a win, a big win to the Manly Sea Eagles, 44 points to 6. That was at Four Pines Park. If we look at the recent form of both these sides, the Newcastle Knights, 2 out of their last 5, and Manly, 3 out of their last 5. No Tommy Trbojevic again. He's had an injury-riddled season, unfortunately, so Lehigh Hapawadi is the fullback. But look, the Sea Eagles, they had a good win against the Cowboys up there in Townsville. They got smashed by Parramatta, 30 points to 10, and then had a win against the Broncos. Well, anyway, anyone could probably get a win against the Broncos these days, the way that they are going at the moment. But for the Newcastle Knights, they had a loss to the Dragons, and they had a win over the Panthers. That was an Origin-depleted side, but that was out at Bathurst, and a good win a few weeks ago now against the Rabbitohs. So, look, the Newcastle Knights, they struggle to score points this season. They've only scored 159 points and let in 228. So, look, they are struggling to score points. I don't know where their points are going to come from. The last time I said that, they absolutely smashed the Panthers. I think it was like 20-0 at half-time or 18-0 or something. It was ridiculous. So last time I said that, they scored a plethora of points in that game against the Panthers. But only 6 again last week against the Dragons. So, look, I'm going to tip Manly. They had a good win against the Broncos, but as I said, anyone can beat the Broncos these days at the moment. I am going to tip the Manly Sea Eagles to get the job done up there in Newcastle. Sorry about that, Knighted. Lincoln from the Knighted podcast. Sorry, mate. But I am going to tip Manly. The first game on Friday night at 6 p.m. sees the Melbourne Storm take on the North Queensland Cowboys at Amy Park. Xavier Coates and Harry Grant return. They were rested after Origin. Trent Liero will start after coming off the bench last week. Bronson Garlick goes to the bench after playing hooker last week, and Sua'afai Longo goes to the reserves. For the Cowboys, they have named the same 17 that got the job done against the West Tigers, but wow, wasn't that a game. I almost thought that the Tigers were going to jag that right in the end, but they didn't, so that was certainly a worry for the Cowboys. Murray Tuilagi has a calf injury, and Jason Taumalolo, also a calf injury, remains sidelined. Two big outs for them, two of their biggest players, their big stars. And look, this is going to be difficult for the Cowboys travelling away. They've played a lot of games at Queensland Country Bank Stadium in recent times. I think they've had like 3 home games in a row up there in Queensland Country Bank Stadium. And so they've had, we'll look at their form. They've had a win, a loss, draw, loss, win their last 5. For the Melbourne Storm as well, they haven't been dominating this season. A lot of people thought they may have. They're 3 out of their last 5. They had a win against the Titans last week. They lost to the Sharks down at Shark Park. They absolutely smashed the Tigers 64-0. That was on a sunny Sunday afternoon, I think it was. Lost to the Raiders, who are second in the competition at the moment, and defeated the Rabbitohs. So, look, they can score points. They're a side that can score points. They put 50-odd against Parramatta in round 1. They just put 64 on the Tigers as well. They've scored 366 points for the season, and the Cowboys 260, so almost scored an extra 100 points than the Cowboys, and about 68 points more the Cowboys have let in defence. So they can also score a lot of points, but they can let in a lot of points as well. So look, this game here, I think Melbourne will just win it. I think it could be like a 1-12 win to the Melbourne Storm. They last met last August. That was up in Townsville, 38 points to 30. Only met the once last season. So I think it'll be a 1-12 game, and I think it'll be a 1-12 win to the Melbourne Storm in that one. I just think the return of Harry Grant, that's a big one for them. Had a quiet Origin game, I thought, so he'll want to get back into it and show the Queensland fans and selectors just how good he is. We all know how good he is. Maybe it was just an off game. Hopefully for New South Wales fans like myself, it continues in game 2. But the second game on Friday night is at Suncorp Stadium. No, it is not the Broncos. It is the Dolphins taking on the Dragons. So the 2 red and white sides. So this will be interesting. I think maybe the Dolphins might play in their black jersey. I think they've got a black jersey with a bit of red on it. Either that, maybe the Dragons will play in their Illawarra kit and the Dolphins in that predominantly black kit. We'll just have to wait and see about that one. For the Dolphins, Hammer, he returns to the side. So Jake Averillo goes back to the centres. Now, Hammer was on Origin duty when they beat the Bulldogs 2 weeks ago. They had the bye last week, so that is the reason why he is back. Jeremy Marshall-King and Max Plath are listed amongst the reserves. They are close on returning, so a couple of key players for the Dolphins close to a return. Now, for the Dragons, Luciano Leilua comes into the starting side. Unfortunately, Jaden Sewer sidelined by an ankle injury. Raymond Fatala Mariner joins the bench as well. So, look, a couple of ins for them. Tyrell Sloan drops to the reserves. Christian Tuipulotu is good to go after a hamstring injury. So, Tyrell Sloan dropped to the reserves for the Dragons. So a couple of changes there. Nathan Lawson, I believe, made his debut last week. He gets a wing spot there for the Dragons. So, look, this one, it could go either way. The Dragons have been playing some pretty reasonable football this season. The Dragons are in 8th spot. The Dolphins are in 10th spot. The Dolphins go into this game favourites, but look, I wouldn't underestimate the Dragons in this one either. Last year they met twice. It was a win apiece. The Dragons won 26 points to 6 in the second encounter at Cogra, I think it was Wynn Stadium actually, and then the Dolphins beat the Dragons 38-0. If you look at the form line of both these sides over the last 5 weeks, it's 2 wins apiece out of 5. Both last start winners. As I said, the Dolphins had the bye last week. So it's a pretty evenly matched sort of game, to be honest, in terms of defence and scoring points. So points conceded for the Dolphins, 252, for the Dragons, 245, so pretty close there. The Dolphins have scored an extra 46 points than the Dragons. So, look, it's pretty evenly matched game here. But I am going to tip the Dragons in this one. I'm going to go the Dragons. I just think they're playing some alright footy. Clint Gutherson, they're signing from the start of the year. He is really leading the way, as we knew he probably would. He's playing some good footy, but I think, the Dragons in that one. On Saturday, 5:30pm, the first game on Saturday, 5:30pm, is at Shark Park, and it sees the Cronulla Sharks take on the New Zealand Warriors. So, look, this will be a interesting game. Both sides in the top 8. The Warriors are in 3rd, and the Sharks are in 5th. The Warriors had a win against the South Sydney Rabbitohs last week. The Sharks had a bye last week, I believe. So they'll be fresh, ready to go. Ronaldo Mulitalo, he is suspended, but Sione Katoa returns from a shoulder reconstruction. It's his first game of the season this game, so it'll be interesting to see how he goes. For the Warriors, a massive loss for them. Mitch Barnett, season-ending ACL injury against South Sydney last week. So, look, that is a big loss for the Warriors, as is Rocco Berry, a hamstring. So, Kurt Capel moves to the centre to fill in for Rocco there. Look, a couple of changes for the Warriors. Maybe could it be a little bit upsetting for them? Look, this is going to be a really close game. The Sharks go in as favourites into this one, and probably because they're at home. Last year they met twice. It was 1 apiece. It was very close games. The first game was 16-12, won by the Sharks over there in New Zealand, and then the return bout was won by the Warriors, 30 points to 28. So very close games there. If you look at the form lines of both these sides over the last 5 weeks, the Warriors have won 4 out of 5. So they are one of the form sides in the competition. The Sharks are 3 from 5, having lost to the Roosters and the Tigers 5 weeks ago. Another pretty evenly matched teams in terms of points and defence. The Sharks 292, the Warriors 251. The points conceded, defence 248 for the Sharks and 246 for the Warriors. So completion rates 80% for the Sharks, 81 for the Warriors. So a pretty evenly matched side game there. The Sharks are in 5th and the Warriors in 3rd, as I said. Look, I am going to tip the Sharks in this one 1-12, and only because it is at Shark Park. They did defeat the Melbourne Storm there a few weeks ago now. The Warriors, their second away game in a row. The loss of Mitch Barnett is a big one. I will tip the Sharks in that one. Their second game on Saturday at 7:30 p.m. is on the Gold. It is at Suncorp Stadium. So yes, it is the Brisbane Broncos this time. On a Saturday night, 7:35 p.m. So the Broncos taking on the Gold Coast Titans. Now, wow, what a game this is going to be to tip. This is going to be very hard to tip. The Titans are in 17th spot at the moment on the ladder. The Broncos are in 11th spot on the ladder, but playing like bustards. Reece Walsh is back for the Brisbane Broncos, so that is a big in for them. His first game since round 7. Selwyn Cobbo goes back to the wing. Dean Mariner drops out. So Corey Jensen has been promoted to start at prop. Pat Carrigan moved to lock. Kobe Hetherington moving to the bench. So, look, a few changes there for the Brisbane Broncos. And, boy, didn't they need to make some changes. That is for sure to get a victory because they need one there. Yeah, so the Titans, AJ Brimson, he suffered a concussion at captain's run before round 13. He's been listed as 18th man, so will he get a start in this game? I think they're trying to get a exception for him to play in this game. You could say this is a local derby sort of thing. The Gold Coast up against the Brisbane Broncos, so you could say that, I guess. So, look, a few changes for the Gold Coast Titans, but boy, the Brisbane Broncos, they are struggling. And look, I'm not going to harp on about it because everyone else is, but I just don't know about the Broncos. They go into the game as favourites. It is at their home ground, I should say. Last year at the Gold Coast got the win 46 points to 18. Form lines for the last 5 weeks are about the same. One win out of their last 5. But the Broncos have lost their last 4 in a row. The Gold Coast Titans have lost their last 2 in a row. Two heavyweights, the Storm and the Raiders. So the Gold Coast have let in more points and have scored less points than the Broncos. But yeah, look, I don't know. Should I go the upset of the round and go the Titans? I just don't know. Look, I'm going to tip the Titans in this one. I tipped the Broncos last week and they burnt me by losing to Manly. I probably should have tipped Manly being played at 4 Pines. But look, Reece Walsh, bit underdone. I'm going to tip the Gold Coast Titans in an upset. That can be my upset for this week. I'll probably get that one wrong now, but anyway. The Gold Coast Titans to get the win in that one. Then we head to Sunday, and it is the Canberra Raiders down there at GIA Stadium taking on the South Sydney Rabbitohs. And look, congratulations to Mr. Josh Papali'i, who will be playing his club record game. I think it's 319 games for the Canberra Raiders. So he equaled the record last week, I believe, and this week he breaks it. So he's been listed to start this week instead of coming off the bench. Corey Horsburgh moves to lock. Morgan Smithies to the bench, and Jamal Fogarty, big in. He is back after missing the win over the Roosters with a groin injury. But for the Rabbitohs, 2 big ins. The Jack Whiten and Cody Walker are back from calf injuries. They last played 7 weeks ago together. Isaiah Tass shifts to the wing. With Whiten coming back. Jaden Sullivan goes to the bench. Jai Gray, who, look, he had a cracking start to the year too, didn't he? He drops to the reserves. For the Raiders are coming second. They are favourites, and so they should be. The Rabbitohs are 9th. They're not too far away from 8th spot. Last year, it was a massive win to the Raiders, 32 points to 12 over the South Sydney Rabbitohs. The form line, well, the Raiders, they're the form team out of these two. 4 out of their last 5. The Rabbitohs, 2 out of their last 5 wins. It's a funny stat, though, that the Rabbitohs have conceded less points than the Raiders. The Raiders 288, the Rabbitohs 269, but the Raiders can score points. They've scored almost 150 more points than the Rabbitohs, so they do know how to score points. And look, I think they will get the win down there in Canberra this weekend and just keep on their merry way and get the win down there in front of their home fans in Josh Papali'i's record-breaking game. Now, West Tigers. This is a West Tigers home game up against the Penrith Panthers, who had a home game last week at CommBank Stadium. So figure that one out. So 2 teams playing out at CommBank Stadium, as well as Parramatta. Wow, there you go. Just one of the home grounds for the West Tigers, CommBank Stadium. But this is the game where we see Jerome Luai and Turuva play up against their old club. Jerome Luai versus Nathan Cleary. This will be interesting. Look, they are great mates. They won 4 comps together, so it will be very interesting to see what happens here. Alex Twal, crowd favourite, unfortunately suffered a concussion. Alex Seyfarth shifts to lock. So a bit of a change there. Tony Sukar promoted to start in the back row. Brent Naden and Charlie Staines dropped to the reserves list. So a few changes there for the Tigers. Jarrell Skelton, who suffered a hamstring injury previously, he is back on deck. He is in the starting side on that wing position, his first game since round number 5. For the Panthers, look, they've named the same 17 that unfortunately beat my Eels last week. Isaiah Papali'i and Luke Garner, they're listed among the reserves as they look to return. But why would you change a winning side? Just keep the same one, I reckon, which they probably will. So I think they'll probably, why change a winning side? But look, the Tigers, geez, they pumped out the points last week, didn't they, against the Cowboys? As I said before, I thought they were going to get the win. 2 years ago, very famously, a big victory for the Tigers, 12 points to 8. That was out at Bathurst, I believe. But last year, 2024, the Panthers got the win, 22 points to 6. Form line of these two sides, well, look, the Tigers, 2 out of their last 5. For the Panthers, 2 out of their last 5 as well, but there is a draw there, 30-all with the Cowboys. So they obviously clicked in the gear against their arch rivals, the Parramatta Eels, last season. Nathan Cleary had a day out. Look, again, not much points, not much between these two sides. 254 points scored for the Tigers, 268 for the Panthers. About 40 points difference in defence. The Panthers better off there. So, look, they're very, very close stats between these two sides. The Tigers are in 13th, the Panthers are in 14th. They'll want to get a win just to keep on slowly climbing up that ladder. The Tigers, they'll want to show, or especially, I guess, Jerome Luai and Turuva want to show their old teammates that they've still got it at the Tigers. But yeah, that'll be an interesting battle there. That'll be interesting. I think they are great mates, but look, I think the Panthers will have too much class in that one, and they will get the win. So I'm tipping the Panthers in that one. And a game on Monday to round it out. It is the King's birthday long weekend, which sees the traditional Bulldogs versus Eels game. 1st versus 16th. arch rivals once again. They are expecting a massive crowd out there at a core stadium. Once again, the Bulldogs have got $10 tickets up for sale as well. I think they're trying to break the Good Friday crowd they got there. They're looking at probably 65, 70 plus thousand people out there at a core stadium, so almost a semi-final like crowd. But the Bulldogs, they're flying high on the ladder and they're playing Parramatta, so they will fancy themselves, no doubt. But as I've said long and much before as well, that these rivalry games, even if one team is on the top of the ladder, one is down the bottom of the ladder, they both seem to rise to the occasion and try and get it. So I think that'll be the case again this weekend. Look, this season, I think it was round 3, the Bulldogs got the win 16 points to 8. That was at CommBank Stadium. The form line for both these sides, 3 out of the last 5 for the Bulldogs. They had the bye last week. They've got now Lockie Galvin in their ranks. Will he play? He has been named at number 23 on the extended bench for Parramatta. 2 out of their last 5, but they have been improving. They went down to the Sharks at Magic Round. They probably should have beaten the Dolphins at CommBank Stadium. They got very impressive wins against the Knights and Sea Eagles. They were in the game against the Panthers. If you haven't already heard, listen to my game day review of that one, game review podcast. They were in that game as well. A few different decisions, and they probably could have got the win. But so they have been improving. They just haven't got the wins that they thought they would. This is massive. But as I said, Lachlan Galvin has been named in the extended bench, jersey number 23. Stephen Crichton comes back. Max King comes back. Kurt Mann comes back. Jacob Carraz comes back. Daniel Saluka Fafita comes back. So they get a lot of troops back. Will Penasini, he returns for the Eels after suffering a concussion against Manly, and which sees Jordan Samrani move to the bench and Joash Papali drop to 18th man. Kelma Tuilagi has been named to start the game, but we may see a late swap with Luca Moretti coming off the bench. They may swap on game day like they did last week against Penrith. Look, I'm going to tip Parramatta, obviously. 1 to 12. I'm going to tip Parramatta 1 to 12. People will call me foolish if I'm trying to win a tipping comp, but look, as I said, you just don't know. You just do not know in these games what is going to happen. Rivalry games, 2 big teams, 2 big Sydney teams. One is flying, one is getting better, but down the bottom of the ladder. A massive game, massive crowd. It's so good. I cannot wait for Monday. It will be huge. I am going to tip Parramatta. Look, I think the Bulldogs, they had the week off last week with their bye. They got beaten by the Dolphins the week before that. They've had a lot of, would you call it, dramas with the Lachlan Galvin signing there. The reports sometimes that players aren't happy about that one. We'll just have to wait and see. I'm not too sure, but we'll just have to wait and see what that one is. But I am going to tip Parramatta in this one. And now, I will now hand over to Ella to give her tips for round number 14.
Hi, it's Ella from the Paracave podcast. These are my round 14 tips. I'm going Manly, Melbourne, Dolphins, Sharks, Brisbane, Canberra, Penrith and Bulldogs. Bye!
Well, thank you, Ella, for your tips there. And look, it is obviously a few different ones there. I knew you would tip the Bulldogs, but Look, I knew you would tip them, but that's okay. It is a tipping competition, all brought to you by Shaw Strata Reports and also Buddy Oldman Masters Boxer, both on Instagram. Please give them a follow as well, as they are sponsoring the tipping competition, so I really appreciate that one. Look, thank you very much for listening to this tipping podcast. I really appreciate the support. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if your tips are the same as mine. And look, at the end of the day, enjoy your rugby league across the weekend. I have to wait until Monday for the Parramatta game. But look, the Paracave podcast by the fan, for the fans. Go Para! How you going, mate? Are you a Paracave podcast listener?
I am, bro. It's a great podcast. Everyone tune in.
Go Para!
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Paracave Podcast. See you next time.